Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavatyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastvandakaro Vai Rukarastvanivartaka Andhakara nirodhitvat gururitya vidhiyate Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya madhyamam asmadacharya paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Excuse me. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyema Kshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangayistuštubhagum sastanubhi Vyashema devahitam yadayuhu Swasti na indro vriddhashravaha Swasti na pusha vishvavedaha Swasti na starksho arishtanemihi Swasti no brihaspatir dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So just a quick enunciation of verses number 3 and 4. And the way this is sung, we'll do that way. Na karmana na prajaya dhane na tyage naike amritatvamanushuhu parena nakam mihitam guhayam par Vibhrajate yatyatayo vishanti Vedanta Vikyana Sunischitartha Sannyasa Yogat Yataya Shuddha Sattva Aha Te Brahma Lokeshu Para Antakale Paramrita Parimuchanti Sarve. So that's how this is enunciated. So let us look into some aspects of that. I was just thinking about this last verse that we did already. Na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyage naike amritatvam anushuhu. So this is a very interesting enunciation. Because it says, pardon me, I just wanted to get to the right one. Na karmana na prajaya dhanena tyagena eke amritatvam anushuhu. So, it says that our view of progress in our life is to acquire more and more. In fact, the entire society, the technological advancement, etc., all point to the fact that the more we have, the better off we are. And so this is one, we've already done this verse, but just to kind of revisit it for a while. The general tendency in our mind is that I need to have lots of everything. Lots of friends, lots of money, children, property, and so on. The more the better. And that somehow is the recipe for my happiness. This is the view we have. And in fact, if you look at the commentaries of Swami Maheshananji and all of many other acharyas also, they all say that the Western culture is to promote this in many ways. So you have more development, more technology, more roads, more places to visit. And compared to that, you have countries that are undeveloped or underdeveloped. Right? So this is the way to look at countries from the standpoint of their stage of development. So an undeveloped country is the one that doesn't really have highways, infrastructure, lacks technology, etc. And the developed country is the one that has all of it. So this is the prevalent view we have. And in fact, even in the undeveloped countries or underdeveloped countries like India, the view is the same, that somehow we need to be more developed. And if we are more developed like the US and the other Western countries, we would be better off. This is the view. The question is this the correct view or not? And what the Shastra says here in this verse number 3, na karmana na prajaya na dhanena tyage naika ekam amritatva manushu. It says this is not true. You are fooling yourself by assuming that the more is better. In fact, if you examine, you find that yes, you may be better off materialistically, no doubt about it. But does that lead to a peaceful mind, a happy person? Does it really amount to or not? And the answer is no, it does not. Then why do we do it then? How come everybody is having that viewpoint? It's an error. It's a Brahma. It's a Brahma. And the reason it's a Brahma is that the assumption is that the human being lacks happiness unless I arrange for things to give me happiness. Pardon me. That I have to acquire it. This is the view. Right? And if that is the view, that is the assumption, then for a while you may actually feel better if you have more possessions, more of everything. It's interesting, I find that some of the very wealthy people that we know, so this is what happens. I'm sure that you are aware of this also. You start to make wealth and then you improve your house, you have a better house, and very at a very desirable neighborhood, etc. And you may buy an extra car, more than what you need, but you just a nice second car, and so on. So that happens for a while, and then there is a sense of satisfaction that I've acquired something, I'm happy with this, and so on. Then you make more money through investments or through floating a public company or whatever. There's initially you may be worth like a few $1,000,000, $2 or $3 or $5 million, but then you keep on acquiring more money. I know of people that this is what I'm talking about. This is not theoretical. Then the question is, what do we do with that? So instead of $5 million, now you have $20 million in the bank. It's just sitting there. You don't know what to do. Usually I find is people buy second homes, and then third homes, fourth homes, fifth homes. So one on the East Coast, one in Hawaii, one in skiing country, and so you have multiple ones. And so now you feel, now I've really arrived. And then of course the next stage to that is you have a private plane. You don't travel on commercial airlines. You have your own plane, your own pilot, and so on. This is the next thing that happens. And so this is supposed to be the sign of progress. You really examine their lives, what they are really enjoying. You will find this is just a mirage. Because I know the lives of certain people that are fit this bill. And what you find is that they're busy with things but not happy. Not happy. Can you believe owning 5 homes? You cannot live in any one of them for more than a few weeks. They are on outlying areas. There are staff required to take care of it. There is property taxes to be paid. You don't think that weighs on you? It does. I find these people to be very worried. Oh, I wonder what's happening. I bought a home in Cabo, San Lucas in Mexico, and there was a hurricane or there was a theft. They're continuously thinking about that. Anyway, so the point is that this notion that more is better is flawed. And this notion that more is better may at least be possible if you firmly believe that I am lacking happiness. And of course, the interesting thing about Brahma, about the illusion of this, is that for a while you do something and it seems to work. You buy another home and then you can bring your family there for vacation, and everybody's happy, you're happy, and you feel, oh, this is wonderful. Why don't I duplicate it one more time? It's a trap. And so what happens is that you go down this path, and only then you realize this is not really what I want to do. It's too late. You're already into this, and you cannot change things, and so on. You there was this story that Swami Dayanandji had told us. I think I've told you this. That one day this very uh, wealthy couple was going on a he was on uh, a vacation to a sea resort. So he was walking on the beach, and around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning or something, and he found these fishermen who are working so hard to catch some fish, and then by about 9 or 10 o'clock they have caught the fish and they have cleaned it off and they are selling it out in the marketplace, or they give it to someone else for selling. And now they're just sitting there, just tired and just happy, drinking a cup of coffee and so on. So this couple goes to them and he says, so you are a fisherman? He says, yes, sir, I'm a fisherman. This is my boat and this is how. So how much fish do you catch? He says, I catch some pounds and it's enough to feed my family. So he says, but then you are not working anymore? You're just resting on the beach? He says, yes, I think that's all I need to do because I just have a small family and I feed them and we have enough money. And then I don't need to do catching the beach, the whole day. So that's it. I just do it in the morning and then that was it. So he says, have you ever thought about working a little harder and maybe making and getting twice as much fish, 3 times as much fish? Why do you have to finish work at about 9 o'clock in the morning? Work until 1 o'clock or so. He said, sir, I feel that it is okay for me. It's working. I'm happy. After that, I just sing some songs and have my wife and we both have lunch together. We take the kids to school and this is working out okay. He says, no, but wait, have you considered that? He says, not really. He says, then do another thing. Why don't you work for a while and buy another boat? And then have somebody else do the work for you. So he says, okay, so then what will happen? He says that then you can buy a third boat from that money, and then you can have somebody else and you can make more money. So he says, okay, then what will happen after that? He says, if you do that, then you will have free time to just walk on the beach and do nothing, just like I'm doing. So he said, sir, I don't understand. I'm already doing that. So why are you, after all this, you're just saying that the end result is just walking on the beach, is just enjoying the waves. I'm already doing it. I don't understand what that. So this is the problem with that. So therefore, this idea that I need to acquire more. And why? Because I am incomplete as the moment. I'm not happy. I don't have enough money. I need to work. Everybody wants me to work hard, and if I don't, then I'll be left behind. And that's not what I want to do. I want to really do more things. However, if you were to be told that the very source of happiness that you are trying to acquire from outside is already available in you, just not tapped, just not understood, you are denying it. Very much like you are, say, a wealthy person, but in a dreamy state, you become a pauper. You deny your wealth by not being awake to it. So similarly, if I were to tell you that you are okay the way you are, and in fact, instead of acquiring, you have to give up. Tyagena eke amritatvam anashu. So he says, what do you mean by give up? How? Give up what? I don't have anything to give up. He says, yes, you do. You have a lot to give up. In fact, you need to give up a sense of smallness, a sense of inadequacy. This was one of the favorite words of Swami Dayanandji, was inadequacy. And in this I think on the Tuesday night class I mentioned this, there's a very beautiful books that Swamiji came up with, which says Fundamentals of Vedanta. And I really highly recommend that book. So there he uses this word adequacy and inadequacies, very much so. So this sense of inadequacy that I have, that I don't have enough, I need to get it from outside, is a false notion. And so therefore, this false notion has to be given up. And it is covered with all kinds of derivatives of the false notion. Derivatives of the false notion means that every time there is something not quite right happening in your life, including health problems, work problems, friendship problems, conflicts within a house problems, you just put it on yourself that I'm not happy. My health is not good. How can I be happy? I need to do something. And I'm not happy with the home. I need more friends. All kinds of things that you do. Work. So somehow I have a notion that I am inadequate and I need to really remove this inadequacy. If it is proven to you that you are the only adequate person that exists in the whole creation, and it is the same adequacy which is true for everyone as the pure Atma, and in fact inadequacy is a covering. This is why it is said that really the process of understanding Vedanta is very much like cataract. Very important example. Because in cataract you have a artificial covering which is covering a healthy eye. Your eye is still working well. But because of the cataract, this example is very fresh in my mind because I went to an optometrist yesterday for some testing. And because what happened was that I have two glasses that I wear. One of them is for the day, and I have dark glasses. These are powered glasses. And the other one is for night. And for some reason, the dark glasses for the day I lost. Just happened about 2 weeks ago, which was unfortunate because I went on a vacation to Hawaii, and I needed the dark glasses. So I was able to put something with clip-ons, but I really lost my glasses. I don't know, it must fell out somewhere. I'm usually very careful. I have it for a year and a half. It fell out. Anyway, I went to the optometrist. And so the optometrist said, okay, your eyes are looking okay. You do need cataract sometime, not ready, but sometime later. You're okay for right now. Do you know, I'm so fortunate. This assertion that you need cataract but not now has been given to me yearly for the last 10 years. Every year I thought that somebody would say now you need it, but same just happened yesterday. This lady doctor told me, she says, Mr. Kapoor, I think your eyes are okay. You might need cataract in a few years, but right now you're okay. I didn't want to tell her that. This has been going on, exactly the same words for the last 10 years. Somehow or the other, I've been avoiding cataract. But if it happens, it happens. But the cataract is a very beautiful analogy for Vedanta because it covers my sense of adequacy. And so it's not as though I am basically inadequate, but that my adequacy is covered by a false sense of inadequacy. And so the removal of cataract is a rather simple procedure. And once that covering is removed, your healthy eye is still able to see. So therefore, this is an important thing for us to see. And we don't accept it. This is the problem. That somehow I need to acquire more things. In fact, you need to give up things that you already have. You don't need anything. I mean, I'm talking, you need a few things to eat and so on. That's it. I was reading a recent story. This is a very, very beautiful theme, actually, for this. So it turns out that there was a poor Brahmin who was born into a very spiritual family and was a very devout Shishya of Ishvara, of Shiva, and just used to live very simply. Didn't really need much. He was just happy as it is. And so he got married to someone who came from a different background and was rather unhappy with poverty, wanted to make more money. Anyway, these two guys get married together. And now his wife was always troubling him. Why don't you do something? Why don't you work some more? Just like that fisherman story. And he says, honey, I'm okay. I'll have enough money for my children and so on and so forth. He says, she was very unhappy with him that he's not more aggressive. So she found out from a friend that the local king was a very benevolent person. And so what he would do is once a week, he would have a court where all the commoners were available to come to. And he would ask them, what do you need? And if somebody can convey some real need to them, he would try to make sure that they are given the extra money for help. So he was quite famous for doing that. So what his wife one day told him, he says, I do something. I know you are not fond of working, unfortunately, but can you please go and beg from the king to give you some help? Because I've seen that he gives money to people who really need it, and we certainly need it. We are very poor, and so why don't you go and beg from him? He wasn't very happy about it. He says, I don't understand why I have to do that, but anyway, if you ask me, I'll go. So he was standing in the line, and as you know, on these kinds of things, where people become very aggressive, they break the lines and they grab and go to the front of it and says, me, me, just like in a bus station in India. Everything is nice and quiet. As soon as the bus comes, then all chaos breaks through. People just break the queue and so on. Anyway, so this is what happened. This poor Brahmin didn't do that. He was a very honest person, and he says, I'm just going to stay in the line. By that time, an hour or two had passed by, and the king's court was about to be dissolved, and so his turn had not come yet. And so the king noticed that this person is just very quiet and so on. So he called him and said, why did you come? And how come you were not aggressive in asking for things? So he says, sir, I was just in a queue. I was in the line. People are breaking into the line, but I didn't want to do that. So he says, you are a wonderful person. Why don't you come tomorrow and we'll make sure that you get something. So he comes back tomorrow, next day, and stays in the line. So the king called him and said, what do you want from me? He says, I really don't want very much. My wife is badgering me, and I respect that because she is her own person, and she's right to be disappointed that I don't have a lot of money. But this is just to satisfy her needs. I need some more money. So the king said, okay, how much money do you need? So he said, king, there is one condition. So he says, yes, what is it? He says, the money that I get must be earned by you without any cutting corners. It should be something which is deserved to be it. There's no falseness in it. It should not, because that money will not do any good to me. If you get this kind of a money, I am not going to be helpful for it. Swami Maheshananji says, it's very interesting. You find is that people, they have, and in India they have two kinds of money. So one is which is earned legally, and the other one which is earned illegally by, this is called black money, where you don't pay the taxes and you don't declare what your assets are, and etc., etc. So in that money you just keep it on the side. And the white money is the one which is legal, and you can declare it, you can pay taxes on it, and so on. Swamiji says it is so funny that people, when they go to a temple and they want to give money to the temple for providing some puja, etc., they use the black money. He says, oh, this is only to Bhagavan, so you don't, any money is okay. I'm just helping them out. What's the big thing? Swamiji says, you don't realize you're insulting the Ishvara by offering him illegal money, ill-begotten money, and those assets are not going to help you at all in providing. And then you say, I've been praying to Ishvara for so long, nothing seems to happen. This is the reason why it doesn't happen. You have to be very honest and very upfront on that this was done. So this Brahmin told the king, "Sir, I hope the money that you give will be well earned without any cutting corners. That's all I ask for." So the king got very thoughtful and said, I have really not earned this money. This was all given to me by my fathers and so on. And I'm enjoying with this and I'm happy about it, but this is not something that I earned on my own. But he says, come back tomorrow and I'll try to help you again. So the guy, he says, okay, I'll come back tomorrow. So the king in the meantime gave up his king's clothing and went to a shop incognito and said, "Sir, I need some work." So there was a blacksmith who was pounding these metallic things by heating them up and so on. So he needed some help. He says, "Okay, you do this." And this king worked the whole day, and his hands had all these wounds because he was not used to doing it. But at the end of that, he got some small amount of money, a few rupees, and said, "This is your wages for the day." So the king came back, and the next day he gave it to the Brahmin and said, "This is my real money. This is I have earned from my own, and this is all I can give you, and I am fulfilling the condition," and so on. So the Brahmin came back, and his wife said, "Oh, you must have gotten some money from him." So he says, "Dear, I got these 3 rupees. So she said, "What?" He was very mad and said, "You are just good for nothing, absolutely nothing at all." And so these were actually coins, not rupees. So she threw them in the garden and said, "Forget it, I don't even want to get these. What is 3 rupees of coins going to do for me?" And the story goes that Shiva was watching all this, and he was aware of the authenticity, the loyalty, the goodness of this Pandita, of this Brahmin. So the next day, those coins turned into gold coins, and very expensive gold coins. And so this guy picked them up and went to a jeweler and got a lot of money out of it. And so this is just a story that Swamiji had mentioned. And it's written in the Puranas. This sort of a thing do happen. These things, this can happen. So here the fact is that you have the adequacy, but you don't know it, and therefore you are begging for things that are not necessary. And so the end result is that if we are wise, we take the hint of the Vedantic studies and discover the fact that I'm okay. I have enough to go by. You really don't need much at all. And if you really want true happiness, that instead of getting more houses and cars and this, that, or the other, you give up the sense of ownership. And imagine the peace that you will get. So this is kind of like the central piece of this last verse. Again, number 3. Na karmana na prajaya na dhane na tyage naike amritatvamanashu parena nakam nihitam guhayam vibhrajate yat yatayo vishanti. Okay, this was the last verse that I just thought I would give some commentary on it because I was thinking about the same topic. Okay, now let's go to the last verse that we did, which is number 4. Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitarthaha. Then Sannyasa Yoga Yataya Shuddha Sattvaha Te Brahma Lokeshu Parantakale Paratmrita Parimuchanti Sarvehi. So let's look into that. 10:40. Okay. So we had already gone through Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitartha. So what it meant was that here, those who have understood the meaning of the Vedanta Vijnana. So here the word Vijnana, just a revision of this, not much time, then we'll go forward. Here the word Vijnanam is very deliberately used instead of the word Jnanam. So Jnanam means knowledge, as you know. Then what is Vijnanam? How is that different? In fact, there is this is the same topic of one of the chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, Gyanam and Vijnanam, both of them. So what is the difference between them? So Vijnanam is not academic. Gyanam could be academic. It could be something which is understood but not yet applied to myself. Vijnanam is that knowledge which is directly applicable as an experience to you. And this is the stage that one has to go through. You start with the academic, but then you begin to own it. And it takes a while. It cannot happen right away. Very much like, I think I've given this example so many times. Forgive me for doing that. It is like learning a new language. First, you have to see what the alphabet is. What are some of the words used are, and then you begin to practice it, and there comes a point where you can effortlessly talk without thinking about it, like in English, like what I'm doing now. So this effortlessly thinking about it without having to pause and figure out what is the next word to use and so on, is Vijnana. It becomes your second nature. In fact, it becomes your nature. So that's the Vijnana. So he says, Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitartha. So very well ascertained. Okay, that much we have done. Now let's go to a new material. Sannyasa yogat yataya shuddha sattvaha. So sannyasa yoga. And so here, Swamiji's explanation of sannyasa yogat yataya shuddha sattvaha, which is given in page 82 of this book. Right? And so on page 81, the Sunishchitartha, as we have already explained, is the well ascertained understanding of the Vedanta teaching. This in the Bhagavad Gita is also called Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. So he is given a reference for it. Chapter number 2, verse number 41. Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. So Vyavasayatmika Buddhi means a complete understanding of the nature of Atma and Anatma. That the Atma is an unaffected content of the experiences of life. And the various examples to illustrate that is the electricity, which is unaffected by anything that happens in the appliance. Another example is a person standing in front of a reflecting surface, where anything that happens to the reflection in the reflecting surface doesn't affect you. This is the understanding that one must have. We keep asking questions, how is that possible? How is this, that, or the other? Do that. Learn more. Find out all the facts about it, but that is a fact. This is called Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. He says once that is understood, and it's very, very, very feasible, not something that is that extraordinarily difficult. No, if one is willing, then one can really understand exactly what the situation is. Once that is done, then sannyasa becomes a reality. So here, this fact about knowing the truth about myself can be viewed from two perspectives. One perspective is that the Gyanam has not yet become Vijnanam. I am quite clear about where I need to go, but I am not there yet. As my personal experience guiding my life, I am still not there. But I know the veracity and the truth of how things are working. That much I know. So this is one stage. The second stage is where in fact I am so clear about this fact that I don't need to do anything else. And the reason I am pointing this out is because, and Swamiji also mentions these are the two stages. Either from the stage of a person who is still on the way, and the other stage is where you have arrived. One or those two. In the first stage, the sannyasa is called Vividhisha Sannyasa. Now I'll explain the words in a minute if you're not familiar with it. This is the word used on the top of the page 82, Vividhisha Sannyasa. The explanation of that is the renunciation for the pursuit of knowledge, meant for the pursuit. And the second one is called Vidvat Sannyasa. I don't know whether he has given a... Yeah. So the Vidvat Sannyasa is one where you have ended the pursuit with an actual day-to-day experience. This is called the Jivan Mukti, which is given on page 85. Right? So the word Jivan Mukti, so Jivan means while alive. Freedom while alive is the end point, and the freedom to get to that point is called Vividhisha Sannyasa. So here, so when somebody approaches a Mahatma and says, I want to take sannyasa, what that means is that you now have vyavasayatmika buddhi, a well ascertained idea of what is it that you need to do, what is it that you are, who you are. As the vision of the Vedanta points out, you are very clear about it. And you now approach a Swami, a Mahapurusha, and says, I want to take sannyasa. And the person who you have approached should know you, should know that you are not, this is not just a casual desire. You should also be demonstratively, you should demonstrate your ability. Like this is in the Prashna Upanishad, there's a story that 6 of such people who had certain questions about life, and they met together and said, I have this question. Somebody else says, I have this question. And they all got together and said, wouldn't it be nice if we could find someone who knew exactly what the answers to these questions are, and we can approach him for teaching all 6 of us. There's 6 of them. So they went to this teacher and said, Sir, we are 6 of us who are really desirous of, we have some deep-rooted questions that we don't have the answers to. And we understand you are a Mahatma and you know the answers to all this. Can we please study with you? And so what this teacher said was, all right, let me do this. Why don't you stay with me in this ashram for 1 year? And you do some simple seva, some simple jobs for you. Somebody has to cut the wood, somebody else has to cook, somebody has to wash some clothes. So all the jobs will be given to you. And you do this job and let me see you and observe you, to see how you are and what you do and so on. At the end of 1 year, if I feel you are all qualified to learn, then you please ask the questions to me. And if I know the answers to them, I will be happy to do that. This is how the Prashna Upanishad starts. So anyway, so in the case of people asking for Diksha, um, they can approach their Mahatma and says, I want to now take sannyasa. And if the Swami knows them, is quite satisfied with them, then he can say, okay. Then usually it is given on Mahashivaratri. And I've been very fortunate to observe many such events. When my mother was alive and Swamiji was also there, then every year I will make a pilgrimage to Rishikesh and sometimes later on to Anaikatti on Shivaratri, because on that day Dikshas will be given to 5 or 6 or 10 people, some varying number of people. On that day they take sannyasa. And I would say in all cases they were Vividhisha Sannyasa, not Vidvat Sannyasa. Vividhisha Sannyasa means Veditum Ichha. Knowing, he says they are all Jnanis but not Vigyanis. And they want to learn until they become Vigyanis. So may you please give me sannyasa so that I am fully engaged in this study. Fully engaged. This is called Vividhisha Sannyasa. It's interesting that I didn't know Swami Viditatmananda when he was a brahmachari. I only knew him when he became a Swami. I had sort of heard about him from Radha. Radha was a classmate of Swamiji, and she had once mentioned it to me. I remember when I met Radha, who was also a wonderful, she is one of the few Westerners who has really understood Vedanta very well. Carol, what's her last name? Some other Carol Stanley comes, who was my colleague. But anyway, Radha, when I met her and I said, wow, I'm very impressed by your knowledge. She says, you have not seen anything yet. There are some of my colleagues who are brilliant, and I am just a shadow of them. She used to tell me that. So she gave me 2 or 3 names, and I think one of them was the brahmachari name for Swami Viditatmananda. And so what happened was that Swami Viditatmananda, he's a couple of years older than me, but we all had a very similar introduction to Vedanta. I also met Swami Chinmayananji first, he also met Swami Chinmayananji first. Then when Swami Dayanand came, he also met him for the first time, I also met him for the first time. And then our lives diverged, because I was already a married person with 2 kids, and there was no chance of my taking sannyasa. Whereas Swami, and I went through a course with Swamiji. Swami Viditatmananda also went through a similar course a few years before me with Swamiji. And at the end of the course, I knew that I had promised my family that I will be back. I'm not abandoning them. So I didn't even ask Swamiji, what should I do? I just went back to my job. Whereas Swami Viditatmananda, who was a brahmachari at that time, approached Swamiji and said, what do you want me to do? So Swamiji said, there is no teacher that I know and respect in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. Why don't you go? I know some families. You please approach them and be under their material care. They will give you food and place to live, and you start teaching in Ahmedabad. This is what I would like you to do. Is that okay? Swamiji said, whatever, absolutely, I love it. So he started as a brahmachari in Ahmedabad, but soon his explanations, his study, his answers and so on grew deeper and deeper and deeper, to a point where he started to attract a lot of people that would listen to him. And finally he approached Swamiji and said, can I please take sannyasa? And Swamiji, of course, agreed to him, and agreed to do so, and he became Swami Viditatmananda. So this is what is called Vividhisha Sannyasa. So it's interesting that Swamiji also has a large family. He has a mother. He had a mother. I don't know whether she's still alive. And then has brothers and sisters and so on. But he just felt, this is what he wants to do. He wants to do Tyaga. All the relationships, etc., are now secondary. And now he wants to really study this full time so that his clarity is as good as it can get. So this is the Sannyasa Yogat. So Sannyasa Yogat means through the method of sannyasa, of taking a lifestyle which is devoted to the study of Vedanta. That's what it takes. You cannot be casual about it. You cannot. Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, I find that there are people who look at Vedanta as another feather in their cap. Oh, I'm studying, this is what is called a Renaissance person. I know chemistry and I know politics, and I also I know a lot about Vedanta also. He says, if that is the case, then it is not really going to work. You have to make this as the thing, because nothing competes with it. Everything else should become secondary. Until it does, you can keep studying it, but it won't really have the effect. So this is called Sannyasa Yoga. And the next one is Shuddha Sattvaha. This is also very important. Shuddha Sattvaha. So here Sattvaha means the mind. Satwik mind. Shuddha means Satwik mind. So what is a Satwik mind? So those are the two things given in here. One is Sannyasa Yoga and the other one is Shuddha Sattvaha. If you have both of them, then you are in a good shape to reach where you want to go to. So what is Shuddha Sattva? So Shuddha Sattva means one who has purity of the heart, purity of the mind. So here Vedanta explains the purity in two terms: external purity and internal purity. External purity means simplicity, as opposed to cleverness. So for for materialistic progress, cleverness is a good ingredient. You need to be very sharp and you need to look out for yourself. And you need to be efficient. All those kinds of words. You need to be clever about how go about doing things. You need to grab. If you don't, you're not going to be very successful in your life. This is opposite to what you need in order to gain the Vijnanam of Vedanta. So what is it that you need? You need to be not clever, but to be simple. You need to have a mind which, as the pure mind, means you are consistent in what you do, what you say, and what you think. You have to follow through and be very this is the very modern word, which is a good word. You need to be transparent. This is the way I am. You should be comfortable with it, and you don't need to put on any airs to be what you are not. This is what is meant by the simplicity. And I think we have seen so many examples of that. I find that most people are not simple. Most people are not just, they always have a certain part of their personality which they don't reveal, and which is okay, whatever they want to do, but it is not conducive for their own happiness. One typical example which I find is, I can give you so many examples of this, but one simple one is being punctual. When somebody calls you for a social get-together and gives you a time, you need to be simple and punctual. If the time is 7:30 and you are there at 7 o'clock and saying, oh, I think I'll get ready now. How far is it? It is 20 minutes away. Are you being honest with yourself? Can you get ready in 10 minutes and be in the car and reach there by 7:30? Well, I can be a little bit late. It's okay. That's what they said, 7:30. And I accepted 7:30, but people are always late at that party anyway. What am I going to do? Well, what you should do is to tell someone, is it okay if I come in at 7:45, please? Send them in a text ahead of time. I'll be there. I'm sorry I can't make it at 7:30. But be there at 7:45. People don't do that. That's just an approximate idea. And this poor woman or poor man who is getting ready to, and there's nobody there at 7:30. How do you think that they feel? This is just one simple example where what you think and what you say and what you do don't measure up to each other. A simple one would be, and this is something I would love to really instruct my own children and so on, is work backwards. From 7:30, just be honest. Okay, it's going to take me 15 minutes to get dressed up. 5 minutes to make sure that my car is ready, and 20 minutes to reach there. Maybe a couple of minutes early. 22 plus 5 is 27 plus 15. I need to start getting ready at 6:45. This is the pure simplicity. You put some efforts into it and you measure it. So this is what would be called external shuddha. This is external purity. How you deal with people, what you promise, how you appear to them. It should be a simple, transparent person. Then you have the internal purity. And the internal purity has to be to reconcile what Shastra says, what Vedanta says, and what your view of yourself is. This is the hard one. This is not easy. But to get to the internal purity, you must have external purity. I would say the external purity means truth. Be true. Follow through. Promises. That's the external truth. And the internal truth is harder because you're so used to dealing with yourself in a very different manner. That you are a small person. You're not a small person. You're the biggest person there is. Your essential nature is the same as Paramatma, as Ishvara, as God. And so this disparity between these two has to be slowly bridged through thinking, studying, living. So this is the internal purity. That also means the truth. All resolves into truth, either external truth or internal truth. And you cannot have internal truth until you have external truth, because that is the first step. But after you have acquired the external truth, then the journey begins. Then the journey continues at the internal truth. And that comes from Atma Vichara, as we are studying. It's a new topic on the Tuesday night. Only Atma Vichara will give you internal truth. Internal truth would mean what is the true nature of meditation, of study, resolving doubts. Excuse me. So all of that will come from a study of the internal truth. So this is what is meant by Shuddha Sattva. So we will continue with that next class. So this is what Vedanta Vijnana Sunishchitarthaha Sannyasa Yogat Yataya Shuddha Sattvaha. So Yatayaha means the one who are yatis. So all the same person, but it is to acquire the qualities of Sunishchitarthaha, Sannyasa Yogat, Shuddha Sattvaha and Yatayaha. So Yatayaha, as we have seen already, means that Yatayaha means a plural of Yati. What is Yati? Yatna Shilaha. one who is striving, who tries, strive and tries, who's not complacent until the goal is reached. It's called yati. Munihi and yatihi. Mananashilaha is muni and yatnashilaha. Yatna means effort. One who is active in understanding and not giving up until the end is reached. So that person alone gets it. And we will all get it. The only question is, do we have the right qualifications? And we have to keep on getting better at it, acquiring simplicity, acquiring inquiry, internal inquiry, and tyaga. Not really be involved in acquiring things, but to give up things. And if you are able to do that, you're home. So I think with that I will end the class and continue that next week. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Nice to see you all, so wonderful. Just wait to see if there's anybody has a question, but otherwise best wishes to you. Doesn't look like there's any more questions, so I will take your leave and hopefully we'll see you next week. Om.